So here we have two writers in an art gallery in honor of Culture Night. I'm Alannah Hopkin, and I'm also an art critic. This is Danielle McLaughlin, who has written a book about, well, set in the arts world, called The Art of Falling. And this is Cork City Libraries' One City, One Book for this year. So the idea is everyone will be reading this book, and there will be book club sessions hosted by the library, and so on. So Danielle.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have The Art of Falling chosen as Cork City's One City, One Book, and I'm very grateful to Cork City Libraries who organised the initiative and to Creative Ireland for funding it.
So when Danielle and I came to look at this exhibition in order to prepare for this piece, we were both immediately struck by Michael Quain's sculpture, because Danielle's book centres around a sculpture which has the same kind of presence, doesn't it? Do you want to say what you felt about that?
It does, yes. There is something in this piece of sculpture, in the style of it,
yes,
that I felt was very close to the style of sculpture that Robert Locke makes in the novel. And Robert Locke is an entirely fictional sculptor that I made up. But I got a sense writing the novel over the years of what his work would be like. And this really seems to me to be very close to what Robert Locke would make. I think it's something in the strangeness of it, and it's also in the curves, I think. There's a sense of flow, there's a softness to the turns and to the joints. And it's very strange and very beautiful, and there's a sense, something hybrid about it, I think. There's a merging almost between human and, I'm going to say animal, but it's really a very
monster.
Strange beast, yes, because
absolutely.
What is it? We're not sure what it is.
And it's very much stone, isn't it? It keeps the weight of the stone.
Yes, and you know, I was very struck by the age of the stone, because I think it's something like 350 million years old.
Oh my goodness.
This piece of stone.
So no wonder it has such a strong aura about it.
I mean, think so.
When you walk into the gallery, I think it's the first thing that draws your eyes, and you want to know more about it, and it's very mysterious in its way.
I'm thinking it's invented. There's something about it that puts me in mind of the feet in those creatures, you know, that kid's book, Where the Wild Things Are.
Yes.
And this creature's feet remind me of the feet of those creatures.
And the toenails, of course.
Mm-hmm. And I love the foot in this sculpture.
Oh, the huge foot, yes.
Yeah,
it's all
I
out
love
of
the
proportion
way
to the rest of him.
It's almost like it's growing larger at the point where the human touches the beast, and it's becoming large and wonderfully monstrous itself.
This is The Circus by Finola Lane, painted in 1974 when it was still legal to have animals in a circus. I believe they've now been outlawed. Finola lived in Listowel. She was born in 1922 and sadly died in 2012. But before that, she had a major show of her work in Listowel. They were very good to her. They really appreciated what she was doing. She loved to paint her childhood memories of good times. So her pictures are all, to my mind, very cheerful and very positive. And I just love this. You don't even feel sorry for the horses. Even the horses seem to be having a good time in their way. And she painted Ballybunion a lot, the beach there, and she painted horse fairs. So beaches, horse fairs, circuses, among my favorite things, so I really love her work. And I did actually manage to buy a small painting of hers, of St. Gobnet and the Bees, which is unusual enough. And it hadn't occurred to me that bees are, of course, animals, so it's another animal painting. So I think you were struck by this as well.
Yeah, I love the energy,
Yes.
and just it's so upbeat and vibrant. And I was very struck by what you said there about how she liked to paint happy memories.
Yes.
Because I find, often I have written a lot about animals, not even meaning to, but I have found myself drawn to writing about animals, but I've tended to write about them in a very, very dark and bleak way, where
Yes.
terrible things happen to them. And I'm really struck, and I suppose it's something maybe in recent years I've been more drawn towards, that artists who manage to capture the happiness and the positive and the joy, and there's a real sense of joy in this.
Yes,
And
yet,
life and energy.
and yet it's not at all sentimental.
No,
It's quite realistic, and just the way that guy is standing on the horse, or dancing almost, is very endearing. And it was wonderful visiting her to see a lot of her paintings in one place. It really did cheer me up for the rest of the week to have spent time with these works. So it's lovely to see her in this show of animals, because I think she brings another dimension to it, the human-animal interaction maybe. This is Big Albert by Gail, Richie, and it's in charcoal on paper, and it is Danielle's choice. It really struck you, didn't it?
it did, yeah. I was just completely blown away when I saw this. I think there's such a grim majesty to it, and I'm drawn anyway, I think, to bones and to skeletons and to artists who work with those. And this is just so powerful. I love the way that the head of the pigeon carcass suggests a gas mask for
Yes.
war to me, and that is so wonderfully done. The piece is called Big Albert, and the Albert has several layers of meaning, in that Albert was a racing pigeon, but Albert is also the name of a town in the Somme region, where the artist's great-grandfather is believed to have died in 1918.
Right.
So it's the starkness of this
And kind
bird.
of the horrors of war
Yes,
as well then.
yes. It's an extraordinary piece.
I mean, it's remarkable as a piece of drawing to begin with, but then she somehow made the claws and the remains of a wing very expressive. The head as well, of course, with its gas mask echoes.
And this also puts me in mind of Conal Creedon's book, Begotten Not Made,
Yes.
because in that book Conal has a wonderful racing pigeon from Cork as well, called Doucha Boy.
Yes.
So when I see this, I also think of Doucha Boy.
Yes. That's a nice connection.
And the carcass that the artist, was inspired by or worked with for this has been buried under what is now the Corn Market Centre in Cork.
Right.
So the artist took it back and buried it.
Because it was derelict at that time.
Yeah, I think it
was awaiting development,
Yes.
and artists were allowed to use part of it as studios, I
Okay.
think. But yes, it's very impressive. And just as a piece of exhibition making, it's a wonderful centerpiece for this end of the room. It would certainly draw people in.
And even the way that the bones of the arm, that strikes me like
Yes.
a sword, and we have the effect of armor. So we have this bird going into war.
Absolutely. So here is Patrick Hennessys Cat. That's Patrick Hennessy in the dark glasses. And it was painted in 1978, towards the end of his life. He died in 1980. And he was never really that successful in his lifetime. I mean, he did well enough, but I think it's only now that people are coming to appreciate what an interesting artist he is. And I have a personal connection to him in that there's a picture in the Limerick City Gallery of the quay in Summer Cove, now known for the location of the Bullman restaurant. But there's a painting of his that could only possibly have been painted from my mother's sitting room. And I was there in Limerick City Gallery thinking, wow, how could this have happened? So I did some research, and it turned out he was a friend of Elizabeth Bowen and Ursula Vernon, who lived in Summer Cove. And Elizabeth Bowen had introduced him, and Ursula had found him a house to rent, which my mother later bought. So he lived in our house for quite some time and painted some wonderful pictures of Summer Cove, one of which is in the AIB collection. That still exists. I think they sold it, but it was in the AIB collection. And his work tends to be great fun. He also painted two old women in Kinsale in the typical Kinsale cloaks in Desmond Castle, which is a much-loved painting among those of us who live in Kinsale. But this one, I think, is just such fun with the super realistic cat, and the little bit of somewhere foreign looks to me like, I don't know where that is, the teacup and the orange and his self-portrait. So
yeah, it is so clever, isn't it? And
yes.
Fun is the word, because I think he's playing around with things here. His self-portrait it's almost like he's distancing himself in that painting by having the portrait of himself shown in another painting or piece, if you like. It's like from a catalogue, I think.
It looks like it was a show, yes, or a sale.
So he's at that slight distance from us viewing it, but the cat isn't. The cat is right there in the foreground, and it's almost like the cat has taken a little bit of the stage, and of course this is what he wants to do. He has put the cat in the front of the stage. So it's like an artist stepping back a little bit and asking us to look at this cat, I think. And what is the cat looking at?
Is it about to pounce or run away?
Yeah, the cat has its sights on something, and there's great determination in that cat's expression. And I also love the way this little piece of orange peel is just barely holding on by the tiniest little thread of peel, and it's about to go. It's just barely there. And you know, I love the proximity of that cat's tail to the china cup
as well, and the jug with the brushes.
Yes, because there's so much energy in that cat in the foreground of the painting, and there is just this sense that one flick of that cat's tail, we can even see the hairs standing up on the cat's tail, and that cup is gone and the orange is finally thrown off the shelf. And as you say, the artist's brushes are, you know, thrown aside.
Yes, anything could happen.
And I think there's so much going on there that makes us think about the artist and the making of art and the span of a life of making art. And at the same time, it just reminds me of my cat at home, who will come along and jump on my desk when I'm trying to work and literally lie across the keyboard, or try and paw at my screen when I'm working. So the cat is very much me, me, me. It's all about me. So,
and it just shows how much you can have in an animal painting, because as a genre, it's maybe thought of as something rather simple. But this is very complicated, and we're only scratching the surface of what's going on there. So Well done, Patrick.
Yes, and well done, Patrick, because again, like Finola Lane, the fun and there's a sense of playfulness to this, I think. And I'm really loving animals being worked with in art in a way that is not, as I sometimes tend to write them myself, bleak and dark, and they can be bleak and dark too, and that's wonderful, but it's good to see the other side, the happier, brighter side being embraced as well. The Art of Falling is set in the art world, and it's set in Cork, so it's really special to have this opportunity to read from the book here in the Crawford Art Gallery. In the exhibition Menagerie, Animals by Artists, and I find in my writing I'm constantly drawn, without even realizing it, to writing about animals. They featured a lot in my short story collection, Dinosaurs on Other Planets, and animals also found their way into the Art of Falling. So it's lovely to be reading here, surrounded by art and representations of animals. And as part of this exhibition, the 5th class students of Blarney Street CBS created animal drawings, and these animal drawings feature around the walls of the exhibition, and they're really wonderful. I'm going to read a little section that gives us an idea of the main piece of sculpture that features in the Art of Falling. It's a piece of sculpture called the chalk sculpture. So I'm just going to read a little passage about that. The chalk sculpture stood in the middle of the room. It had achieved notoriety some years before, when it came to be regarded as embodying fertility powers. The public had sought it out in their hundreds. They came in a spirit of supplication, less to marvel at what critics had described as the piece's gritty transcendence, its alien, unsettling beauty, than to plead their case. Nessa walked over and touched a hand to the swell of the figure's belly. The sculpture had once languished for a period in a disused cowshed in Clonakilty, before the farmer, reportedly tired of it, delivered it by tractor and trailer back to the Loch women, Robert Loch being dead by then. Nessa touched a finger to the indent in the centre of the chalk-white belly. A groove had formed from the already water-damaged gypsum being eroded by the hands of pilgrims. Nessa wondered about these people who'd flocked not to consider Robert Loch's genius, but to beg for babies. She had rescued the sculpture from such indignities. But when the gallery had set about acquiring it, parts still had a dungish tinge from the years in the cowshed. The conservationist had spent days with a small brush, engaged in the complicated process of cleaning without erasing. When she was younger and a student of art history, Nessa had written her thesis on Loch. There were many theories on why the sculpture didn't have a face, and she had critically analysed all of them. Looking at the figure now, she was no nearer to understanding why Loch had left the head as a block of unchiseled stone, and yet made one foot so miraculously detailed that even now, all these years later, after all the erosions of air and cow breath, all the indignities of Loretta's cleaning solvents before she knew better, it was still possible to see the trace of a hair on the big toe and the amphibian webbing of the two smallest ones.